Hi, vacation rental owner or manager. Today, we're talking about a big question in the vacation rental industry. Does interior design actually increase revenue? Is there any evidence for this? And if so, is there a particular kind of decorating that makes a difference? Over the past month and a half, I have studied 250 listings across the United States to try to find out the answers to those questions. And I'm very excited because in this episode, I'll share what I have found and how it can make your vacation rental business better. Stay tuned. Hi, vacation rental owner. I'm Kara. Welcome to the Step Up Your STR podcast, which is all about specialized decorating as a strategy so that your STR can earn more bookings and revenue. I've designed dozens of STRs, all of which charge in the top 10% of their area competitors, and I'm so glad you're here. Okay, I have a few questions for you to consider. Is decorating simply something you do after everything else is finished in the way you set up your STR? If you've ever looked at your property and wondered, should I spend some money on decorating? Will I actually make that money back? And does design really matter very much? Then today's episode is for you. As I mentioned at the beginning, over the past month and a half, I have studied 250 short-term rental listings across 10 vacation markets throughout the United States because I wanted to answer that exact question. I wasn't looking for the prettiest homes. The homes I chose were pretty random. On the other hand, I wasn't looking for the prettiest, but I did want to understand whether certain design characteristics consistently appeared in higher performing properties. And some of what I found definitely reinforced what I believe and have believed for years as a designer. But some findings genuinely surprised me. And one conclusion completely changed the way I think about decorating STRs. I am editing this podcast and I just realized that I didn't let you know I also have a free printable summary of some of the data that I found, particularly those design elements that coordinate most with high ADR. So I wanted to let you know that you can download it. It's in the description. And I'm excited to keep looking at the data, finding more trends. So keep watching for more. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why I believe design should be viewed as a business strategy, not simply decorating. I'm going to help you understand 3 findings from my research that did surprise me, the biggest mistake that I think many STR owners make, and I'll share a simple framework that I now use every time I make a design decision. So let's dive in. First of all, I want to cover a little bit more about why I did this research. So for years, I have said something that you've probably heard me say before if you've listened to a few episodes. Guests book with their eyes first. I still believe that's true. Think about your own experience. When you're shopping for a vacation rental, do you start by reading every listing description? Probably not. Most of us don't. Instead, we look at pictures. We are scrolling. Something catches our attention, and then we click on it. Only after that do we start comparing amenities or whether the property is worth the price. Only then do we start reading reviews. And that's just normal. That's human nature. The photos, I want you to know and think through this. The photos and what's in the photos comes first. Everything else comes second. And because I knew that and understand that, I developed a decorating philosophy based on what I saw work in my properties that I called, well, my friend called it the homey trinity. And that name just kind of stuck. It's a trio of characteristics that I found and observed work really well for getting more clicks and bookings. And those 3 things were white walls, intentional color, usually vivid color, and a memorable Instagrammable feature. But over time, I found myself asking, was I actually right? I've designed dozens of STRs, but there are hundreds out there. Was what I was seeing true for all the others too, or for a bunch of others. So there's a big difference between what I was seeing and looking at a bigger, much bigger sample. So instead of just looking at a few more beautiful properties, I started looking for patterns over a lot of properties. Like I said, I studied properties across multiple vacation rental markets, 10 different markets throughout the United States, 250 properties in all. I looked at mountain destinations, beach destinations, lake, cabin, a destination near a major amusement park. So I intentionally looked at different kinds of markets because I wanted to know if there were good design principles that stayed consistent even when the decorating styles and the areas changed. And I am excited to say that's exactly what I found. I found trends. The best performing mountain cabins don't necessarily look like the best performing beach houses, but the same underlying design principles kept showing up. And that was so fascinating and cool to me because it suggests something important. Successful STRs don't look alike. They don't all look the same, but they often succeed for the same reasons. And that realization became the foundation for everything I'm going to share with you today. And likely I'll be talking about this study that I've gone through and looking at more trends over the next at least half a year. I think I'm finding some really exciting things with the data I've gathered. So I'd like to go over the biggest mistake that I think many owners are making. Because as I was researching all these properties, something else became obvious. I do think many STR owners are solving the wrong problem at this point in their business. Now, don't misunderstand. I definitely think pricing matters, as does revenue management, great reviews, professional photography, strong listing descriptions. I'm certainly not saying that those things aren't important because they absolutely are, but they all depend on something else happening first. The guest has to click on your listing. If they never click, then they'll never read your description. If they never get their eyes caught, so they stop the scroll and click, they'll never compare your amenities. They'll never notice any of your 5-star reviews. So all of those things depend on one decision that your potential guest makes, and that decision is this property interesting enough for me to click on? I think that's the question many owners are forgetting. They spend hours writing the perfect description. And meanwhile, their listing photos look almost identical or worse than other properties around them, maybe even every other property. I mean, think about how competitive vacation rentals have become. In some destinations, guests are choosing between hundreds, sometimes thousands of available properties. Like near where I live is Park City, Utah, a major awesome destination for vacations. My understanding at the last number I heard was almost 9,000 STRs are there. So, this really can apply to a lot of markets that are so saturated because no guest is going to carefully study every listing. They can't. Instead, they scan. They are scrolling and moving quickly. They're looking for something that catches their attention, something that might feel different, something that makes them curious. And that's why I often say that design is your first and silent salesperson. Your design is working long before a guest reads a single word of your listing. It's communicating quality, it's communicating personality, and it's communicating value. And it's doing all of that in a matter of moments. Design, how your STR looks, is your first sales conversation and your first interaction with a potential guest. That's an incredible responsibility for something that many owners think of as just decorating. Okay, now what really surprised me the most is, I mean, the research became really interesting because I expected it to confirm many of my assumptions, and some it did, but others were not confirmed. My assumptions showed me a different pattern, and this did surprise me. So the very first surprise involved white walls. which for years has been part of my system of the homey trinity. And honestly, I didn't expect this finding with white walls at all. Honestly, I expected my research to prove me right, but it challenged me. And I love when that happens because that's how we learn. If we only look for evidence that confirms what we already believe, we stop growing. So let's talk about what I found with white walls. For years, I've been a fan of white walls in STRs, and I still am. They are great. They can make a space feel bright, clean, open, fresh. They reflect natural light beautifully. They're timeless, and they're easy to repaint between guests if there's a gouge or a nick taken out of the wall. They also create a wonderful backdrop for furniture and artwork and accessories. So after looking at nearly 250 listings or planning this project out, planning out this study, I expected white walls to be one of the strongest indicators of higher performing properties. But that's not what happened. White walls did appear in most of the higher performing properties, but they also appeared in many average looking properties. And that completely changed the way I think about them. White walls aren't a differentiator. They aren't necessarily the thing that make a property stand out. They're what make a property possible. They are the foundation, the backdrop. They're an excellent canvas in an STR, but they're not the masterpiece. And this sentence, white walls are the canvas, not the masterpiece, that's become one of my favorite ways to explain this. So think about an artist in front of a canvas, and this blank canvas is so important. But nobody walks into a gallery and says, wow, look at that plain canvas. Instead, they're looking at what is painted on it. And the same is true in an STR. Guests don't remember your white walls, but they do remember the feeling your property created. The beautiful bedroom, the dramatic lighting. They remember that cozy reading corner, or maybe the incredible view framed by thoughtful furniture placement. The furniture is gathered around a gorgeous window. Guests will remember wallpaper, an amazing fireplace, a big dining table where everyone can gather. Those are the things that become memorable. So if you've been wondering whether you should paint your walls white, my answer is still probably yes. But don't stop there because white walls alone won't create pricing power. They're simply giving you a great place to begin. Another finding that surprised me is that bedrooms matter more than I expected, but it totally made me rethink how I allocate decorating budgets because I found that bedrooms do matter a lot. Now, of course, bedrooms are important. After all, guests sleep there. But I didn't expect bedroom focal points to emerge as one of the strongest design characteristics associated with higher ADR. Now, when I say a bedroom focal point, I'm talking about the wall against which the bed headboard is pushing against that wall. So that main wall, the bed is scooted up to it. It would have art. It's framed by some lamps. That actually turned out to be a really strong design characteristic. I had no idea. So I think part of the reason that many owners unintentionally treat bedrooms as secondary places is because they know guests will spend a lot of time in the living room. They'll spend time in the kitchen, but they're not realizing that a guest will walk into the bedroom and think, oh, this is my respite for the day. This is an amazing place to sleep. Instead, owners are thinking, this is just a place to sleep. But guests aren't going to see it that way. So let's put ourselves in their shoes again. Imagine we're shopping for a vacation rental. We're looking through photos and we see an ordinary bedroom, maybe a comforter with plaid on it, a bed, a couple of small lamps, nothing memorable. And then the next listing shows a bedroom with beautiful, sumptuous white bedding and a dramatic wood accent wall behind the bed. Beautiful big lamps, a statement headboard, layers of interesting texture on the bed. And so ask yourself now, which one feels more luxurious? Which one feels more expensive? And where you would want to spend the night? Which one helps you justify a higher nightly rate? Bedrooms sell emotion. Guests imagine themselves waking up there, maybe having a cup of coffee there, reading before they go to sleep, enjoying a peaceful vacation. And that emotional image is powerful. The listings that created those emotional pictures consistently performed better than those that didn't. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean expensive furniture like an amazing handmade bed. Instead, it means to focus in on intentional design, creating a really memorable focal point where the bed is, and helping guests imagine themselves there. So, having a really strong focal point in the bedrooms, that is something I have started emphasizing much more in my own projects. Okay, here's another surprising finding, and it's not glamorous, but it's what I call the seating problem. Properties that sleep 8 or 10, maybe 14 guests, but there was not enough comfortable seating for everyone to spend time together. Maybe there was one sofa and a chair, and that's it. And I think that's so sad because I think about my family vacations and the memories, the happiest and most strong memories for me, they're not happening where everyone is sleeping. They're happening together, especially around a dining table, sometimes around the fireplace, watching a movie together, playing games together. That's huge. And maybe talking late into the evening on the porch outside. So that's why this finding was so interesting to me. Many owners had designed for occupancy, but they hadn't designed for togetherness. And those are two completely different things. When guests book a large STR, they're often buying something much bigger than a place to sleep. They want an experience. They're buying that experience. They're buying connection. They're buying shared memories. So if your property sleeps 10 people, but only six can comfortably gather in the living room, you're creating friction. Guests might not totally consciously think there wasn't enough seating, although they might think that. That's what I think when there isn't enough places for people to sit around the dining table. At the very least, people, guests will simply feel like something wasn't quite right. It wasn't that comfortable. And that's important because one of the biggest lessons I took away from this research is that great design isn't just visual, it's experiential. The highest performing properties didn't simply look better, they functioned better. They anticipated guests' needs and reduced friction. And they helped guests enjoy being together. And that's definitely different from simply buying some beautiful furniture. Now, as I continued looking through properties and studying them one after another, I started noticing a few things. One is that the strongest listings weren't winning because they had one incredible feature. They weren't successful because they had one amazing wall of wallpaper, or one expensive sofa, or one Instagrammable outdoor swing. Instead, they were layering many strengths on each other. The strongest properties tended to combine multiple good design characteristics rather than relying on just one standout feature. And average ADR generally increased as more of those strengths appeared together. And this was a huge shift in my thinking because for years, I think many of us, including me, have kind of searched for the magic bullet with decorating STRs. That, finding that one thing, the one decorating trick, the one feature that would suddenly make a property outperform its competitors. But that's not what this research suggested. Instead, successful STRs were intentionally stacking multiple good design decisions all throughout the property. They had a feeling of luxury. Those properties had some distinctly interesting personalities. They had memorable bedrooms. Successful STRs were intentionally stacking multiple good design decisions all into one property. They had luxury perception, a distinct personality that would show up throughout the place, memorable bedrooms, thoughtful presentation, beautiful photography, guest experience. You could see in the photos that guest experience. So none of these things worked alone. But if you stack them and put them all together, They created something much more powerful. And that's when I realized that I had been asking the wrong question pretty often. I kept asking, which design feature makes more money? And now I know that isn't really the main question. Now I figured out that the better question is, what job is each design decision doing? Because you don't want just a bunch of stuff in your rental. You don't want it to look like clutter in any way. Instead, each item needs to earn its stay. Every design decision should help your property do one or hopefully more of three things. One, they need to stop on your listing. They need to click on your listing, and then they need to book your listing. So stop, click, book. Okay, let's talk about each one and what design decisions can help accomplish each of those criteria. So, getting them to stop the scroll, that is the first job of great design. Think about what guests are experiencing. They're scrolling through Airbnb or Vrbo, Booking.com, property after property after property. They're moving quickly. And in just a couple of minutes, they might look at 50 listings. Your property doesn't have to be the prettiest. It definitely doesn't have to be the most expensive, but it does have to earn one thing, attention. If guests never stop on your listing, nothing else matters. And I think this is where so many owners misunderstand STR decorating. They ask, does this room look pretty good? Does it look nice? Instead, I would ask, does this make someone want to stop the scroll? A room can be nice without being memorable. Think about the last vacation rental you booked. Can you remember everyone that you looked at? Very likely, no, you can't. But I bet there were a few that stood out immediately. Maybe it was because of an incredible fireplace, a dramatic bunk room, a stunning dining room with a large table, a really fun mural, or an incredible mountain view framed by beautiful furniture. Something made you stop on that listing. That's what we're trying to create. We don't want it to be weird or gimmicky, just memorable. Memorable and interesting is what's going to stop the scroll. Memorable earns attention. All right, so once you've earned attention, you have a second job. You need to create enough desire so that guests want to know more. This is where I think a lot of owners can accidentally lose bookings because they have one interesting photo, but everything else feels ordinary. So the excitement disappears. Instead, every room should reinforce the story. Think about a movie trailer. One exciting scene gets your attention, but the trailer keeps building anticipation. And your listing ideally should work the same way. That first photo earns the click, and then the remaining photos build confidence. They help guests imagine themselves there. And this is where emotional design becomes incredibly important. Guests don't book square footage or sofas or paint colors. Instead, they book experiences. Can they imagine family game night at that dining table? Can they imagine themselves having morning coffee on the deck? Can they imagine a really fun girls' weekend or a ski trip or maybe Christmas morning? Can they imagine a special birthday celebration? Design helps guests tell themselves these stories. And when guests begin imagining themselves in the property, you're already much closer to getting a booking. The final job is helping guests feel confident paying your price. The final job of your design is to get that booking. Guests don't know what your furniture costs. They don't know where you got your artwork, if it came from Target or maybe a really expensive gallery. They don't know whether your rug cost $300 or $3,000. What they do know is the feeling they get when they look through this property. Luxury is largely perception. So that's an important difference between just a bunch of expensive things. Luxury isn't just some expensive things. Instead, it's thoughtful design, intentionality, cohesiveness, quality, confidence. And when guests feel like everything belongs together and goes together, the property feels worth the price. That's pricing power. I've heard owners say, I wish I could charge another 100 per night. If I could do that, this business would treat me so much better. My question back is usually, would your photos justify it? Will your photos and the decor justify another 100 a night? Because guests decide whether your nightly rate feels reasonable before they ever arrive. They're making that decision from the listing. And definitely design helps justify that price. That's one of the biggest lessons that I've taken away from this research. All right, so let's go over what the best properties had in common. Because as I looked across the highest performing properties, I noticed something else. They weren't all modern or rustic. They weren't all colorful. They definitely weren't all neutral, but they consistently communicated three things. First, they had a strong visual identity. You could describe them. You remembered them. They weren't generic. Second, they created a sense of luxury, not necessarily through expensive materials, like I mentioned, but through thoughtful presentation. Everything felt intentional and like everything belonged. Third, these memorable properties showed memorable experiences. They helped you conjure up in your mind memorable times when you were there. This would be something guests would remember after the trip, like an incredible game room or a really cozy reading area, maybe an outdoor fire pit with plenty of seating around it for everybody to enjoy s'mores. So the point is, guests remembered something, and that is powerful because memorable properties generated stronger reviews as well. I think they generate more referrals, and definitely I have seen in person that memorable properties generate repeat guests. And often, what I saw from the research is more pricing power. So let's put this all together. I'm going to pop up a table on the screen. Okay, so the question, will they stop? Remember, stop, click, and book. That's the revenue design trio. Okay, will they stop? The goal to make them stop is to earn attention. And the design principle that gets attention is a distinct personality. Next, will they click? To get people to click, you have to create some curiosity. Curiosity is achieved through memorable moments. Third question, will they book it? Will they book your place? In order for them to book it, you need to justify the price. And the easiest way to justify a price was a feeling or perception of luxury. So those were the biggest design principles that I saw that correlated most strongly with high ADR, a distinct personality, memorable moments in the property, and luxury perception. Now, something I also want to point out here is that designing a home is different from designing an STR. I'll encourage you to make this big mind shift. Don't decorate the property just for yourself. Decorate it also for your guest. And those aren't the same things. If I'm decorating my own home, I ask, what do I love? What fits my lifestyle? What makes me happy? Those are exactly the right questions to ask for decorating your home. But when I'm decorating an STR, I ask different questions like, who is my ideal guest? What experience are they hoping to have? What will make them choose my listing over the one next door? How can I help them immediately feel that they made the right decision? That is revenue driving design. It's decorating with a business objective. It's recognizing that design isn't furniture, it's marketing. Your artwork isn't just artwork, it's positioning. Your lighting isn't just lighting, it's helping guests feel and perceive value and coziness. Everything should work together. Every design decision should become part of your sales process. All right, here's some final thoughts. When I started this design research, I thought I was maybe looking for decorating tips, maybe even that magic bullet, the thing that will make the biggest difference every time. However, I've come to realize more that decor isn't the goal, revenue is. Beautiful rooms are wonderful, but beautiful rooms that also help you charge more and book more often, receive stronger reviews, create guest experiences that help them have a happy memory. That's what we're after through design. So here's the challenge I'd like to leave with you. The next time you're shopping for stuff for your STR, whether it's a sofa, a lamp, some artwork, don't ask, do I like this? Instead, ask, will this help my property stop, click, or book? If the answer is yes, you're probably making a revenue driving design decision. If the answer is no, it might still look nice, but it probably isn't worth buying for your business. I hope this episode helped to give you a new way to think and some insight in thinking about your decorating for your STR. Now, if it did, I have a favor to ask. Will you please share this episode with another STR professional, owner, or property manager? My goal is to assist more owners to understand that decorating isn't simply about making a property look nice. It's about business. It's about revenue. It's about helping a property perform to its best. If you'd like help applying these principles to your own property, I have several ways that we can work together, including e-design for anyone throughout the United States and full service STR design for people in the Park City and Salt Lake City areas. You can contact me at vrdecor.co. That's VR as in vacation rental decor.co. And I'll also link that in the description. Remember, guests book with their eyes first. Design is your first and silent salesperson. And if your STR isn't designed for more revenue, it won't make more revenue. I'll see you next time on Step Up Your STR. Thank you for listening.